Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Anne Blythe on the podcast. She is a director and founder of Betrayal Trauma Recovery and a podcast host and producer. Betrayal Trauma Recovery is a daily support group with multiple sessions a day in multiple time zones. Betrayal Trauma Recovery also provides a free educational podcast for women needing immediate emotional refuge from the pain and chaos caused by their husband's lying, gaslighting, manipulation, porn use, cheating, infidelity, emotional abuse, and narcissistic traits. After years of attempting to stop her husband's pornography use and anger issues, he was arrested in 2015. Anne educates women on how to safely and effectively navigate their husband's or ex's psychological abuse and sexual coercion and establish peace in their homes and families. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brenda. It's so good to be here.
Absolutely. Continuing with part 2 of Learning to Trust Again.
So I don't even think victims need to worry about walls per se. If they're in this stage where they feel like they need them, great. What's wrong with that? Right. And if you are keeping people away from you, also great. Right. What's wrong with that? Do you have a best friend? Do you have a mom or a sister or a daughter or, people in your life that you let in? If you do, great. You haven't put walls up. What are you talking about?
Right. It's totally normal to be you can't just, it's not healthy.
So good right there, what you just said. You're just putting up walls to protect yourself from the wrong people.
Yeah. And so Brenda and Karen, you guys are friends. You've got each other. You're not putting up walls toward each other. You're not isolated from anything. So if a person who has something to gain from you trusting them too soon is telling you, hey, you have these walls and you need to put them down in order to let someone love you again or whatever, red flag.
Yeah.
Be like, no, true. I have these other people that love me. It's fine. Bye-bye. I think the second thing about boundaries that is really good is you don't have to say them. So you can say them, which is fine. Hey, I feel uncomfortable about giving you my number right now. I'd rather just maybe meet you first in person in a public place, let's say, or something like that. But there are other things where you don't even have to tell the person. You know what that boundary is inside of yourself. Mm-hmm. And if they cross it, you just ghost them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's good.
And so many other things are used against victims. For example, she broke up with me via text or whatever. Right. Or we have all these ideas of things that are appropriate or inappropriate in a relationship. And we don't want to be unkind to someone. And we also don't want to be rude or whatever. But it's okay to not text someone back after you've only been on one date with them. It's fine.
Right.
This is not a big deal. And so don't let these things well, she wouldn't even tell me to my face what the problem was. It was well, if I did that, I would be putting myself in danger of your continued lying and gaslighting me. So of course I'm not going to tell you to your face. In fact, I don't even have to tell you at all. Blocked you on my phone. The end.
Over.
Women have this ultra sense of doing the right thing, which is awesome. And abusers are always going to try to use that against us.
Yes.
So I just know that ghosting someone who is abusive is okay. Ghosting someone who did not adhere to your boundaries that you had inside your head that they don't even know about is actually fine. Yeah. It's fine. This is not your mother who you've known your whole life, who you're Mom, if you keep embarrassing me and telling people what kind of underwear I wear, I am not going to take you out in public anymore, Mom. Right. This isn't like that. This is a man who you've only talked to online.
Yes. No, I so agree. And I think that our listeners need to hear that, just because I needed to hear that earlier on. Because I did have that red flag inside of me, like going like, this is not appropriate to say you love me so soon. But, like you're saying, I hung in there because like I was flattered and he was really hot.
Yeah. and in his case, instead of saying, hey, it's inappropriate to tell me that you love me so soon, right? Which you did, which is fine. Like no victim blaming here. In the future, you can know that you don't even have to say that. You can literally just block him and move on.
Yeah.
If he says that.
And that's what I should have done.
I had that happen when I was online a little bit, like a couple of years ago. Someone was like, oh, you're just, so whatever. He was saying all these really flattering things really quickly. And so I actually just blocked him and was done. So that was it.
Smart.
And he probably was shocked because it seemed to be going so well to him, I'm sure. But I was like, I'm not into this.
To him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're talking about this because I do think this is important to talk about.
I love the song by Beyonce, To the Left. What is it called? Irreplaceable? I don't know if you know the words, but it's like, I'm going to break up with you and I can have another guy like you here within seconds. It's basically, listen to the song. It's awesome. It's basically like, look, don't you ever for a second get to thinking that you're irreplaceable. That's the chorus. But basically she's saying it is super easy to find a man who's going to groom me and flatter me and then abuse me. This is very easy. So I can find another man like you within seconds. So you know what? Bye-bye. Right. Yeah. And I think that can be like when we're starting to rebuild trust, like a lot of us think, oh, like this might be the one or something. And just know that like, if it's the one, there's nothing you can do to mess it up. Like everything will work out. Good. You don't have to work that hard. Like everything will work out if he's really the right guy for you.
Right. He'll have the patience to understand where you're coming from if he's the right one for you.
That's good. Yeah. That's really good. Nothing can mess it up if it is the one for you. I love that. I really do. Because we all think we're just going to mess it up. I think that I'm like, I'm not. Who would want to? I'm a mess. That's what I think. But
anyone would be privileged. Like you, it would be an honor to be with you.
Yeah. And everyone's in process. No one's got it all together. I mean, no one's perfect. We all have our issues we're working on.
Yeah. You're like a funny, fun, adventurous, amazing person. Like, who wouldn't want to be with you?
Right. Exactly. So now that we know why we're putting up the walls, let's talk about how we rebuild that trust. We kind of talked about that a little bit. As we've mentioned, learning to trust again starts with learning to trust yourself. Imagine a brick wall, which is trust, being destroyed, and rebuilding that trust needs to be done brick by brick, like we've been talking about, which I think is good to keep emphasizing opportunities to show that they are trustworthy. So building a new foundation of trusting yourself by getting back to the basics. And anything else you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before, starting to build trust just like with maybe friends, right? Or your children or your parents or yourself. And when it comes to, we didn't talk about learning to trust ourselves, but that is a really important part of it. And part of this might just be basic things like, one of the places to start might be just basic trust with the universe, right? The sun is rising every day. Do I trust that the sun will rise again? Yes. Okay. Do I trust that when I wake up, I can get out of bed? Yes. And some of you might not be able to. And so that might be a place where you're like, oh man, I really am struggling right now. And that's okay, right? That's okay. Right. But learning to trust your own intuition again, learning to trust what you like. It kind of reminds me of Runaway Bride a little bit sometimes, right? Like she doesn't really know what kind of eggs she likes. And then she figures out, oh, this is the kind of, did she figure out in the end of that movie that she doesn't even like eggs? I forget.
I haven't seen that so long. I don't remember.
I don't remember what she comes up with, but like, do you enjoy football, for example? Maybe during your marriage, you were always hosting football parties and stuff. And so you think you like football and then, reevaluate that. Do you really enjoy it? Is it something that you really like? Another thing that we really need to learn when it comes to abuse survival is some of the things that were taken away from us by our abuser, some of the things that were turned against us. For example, many women of faith have really had a lot of spiritual abuse. And so they decide, you know what, I'm not going to church anymore. I feel too uncomfortable, or I'm not going to this church, or I'm not going to read the scripture, or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to tell women that if they've made this conscious decision that they should go back, because if that's what you've decided for you, I totally support you in that decision. If you find that you really did actually appreciate your faith and it really was meaningful to you, and you kind of want it back, right? Trusting yourself to be able to say, you know what, all of this abuse aside, I can trust reading the scriptures again, or something like that, right? So that might be another way to deconstruct what's happened to you, is realize the things that have been taken from you. Like, I'm a skier. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I've grown up skiing, and I love skiing. It's one of my favorite things. I'm a really good skier. And I didn't ski for 7 years, basically, when I was married. And so rebuilding that back into my life has been really important. And that's also been a trust thing for me. I've developed trust in myself again, knowing, yeah, you know what? When I thought of myself as a skier, I was not lying to myself. I am a skier. I am going skiing again. I taught all my children how to ski. This is part of my life again. So rebuilding your identity, rebuilding what you believe in yourself is part of building trust in yourself again. And it could be realizing that things now, football, for example, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not trying to throw football under the bus, but maybe now you're like, oh, I've never really liked football. I didn't realize that. I really do enjoy reading from the Bible. I need to start doing that again. Stuff like that will help you start rebuilding your trust. And that only comes with time. And it helps when you have people around you who are open and caring about your own journey of self-discovery, right? They don't have an agenda. They don't have something where, like, what? You don't like football? You have to because you're the one that hosts the Super Bowl party, or what? You want to go back to church again? Are you crazy? Why would you want to do that? Like something like that. Like you want people around you who are like, great, shine on. I'm so glad that you're on this journey of self-discovery. What else have you discovered, right? People who trust you, they can help you, a sister, a daughter, whoever, they can help you rediscover yourself again as well.
You explain that so well, because my podcast, the first one is called Becoming a Person Again. Because when I got out of that relationship, I wasn't even a person. I was like a robot. But you explain, I didn't realize I was trying to discover who I was and what I liked, but I didn't realize that was learning to trust myself again.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I just took a job in early December at a bank, and I just gave my notice because I'm like, this is not what I want to do. And I'm actually got a job as a baker. I'm going from being a banker to a baker. Because I'm trying to discover, I love baking, and I didn't want the stress because I worked in the airline industry for 17 years. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with angry people anymore and have this huge responsibility. And it's, it's like you said, I feel like I'm discovering, well, in my remaining years, I want to do what I'm passionate about. So I love what you're talking about, really discovering yourself. And I love that perspective where I'm right now, really trying to discover what is my passion, what I want to do with my time. I want to make a living, but I don't want to be a slave to my job and let the job suck the life out of me, because this is my passion, is this nonprofit and the podcast. So I want to have the energy to focus on that. And I love that part of, that's a positive of just, rediscovering yourself.
Yeah. I just didn't correlate it with trusting yourself though. I knew that I needed to figure out who I was, but in the process, so I'm probably already trusting myself way more than I even realized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And think of it in terms of trusting other people again, too. For example, let's say, I think before, let's say we met a man who just was amazing and we really thought they were incredible and they loved basketball. Right. And so when we went to a basketball game with them, we were like, oh, this is so fun. This is awesome. Like, I like being with him. I like everything about, whatever. But then we realized, I really don't like basketball. In fact, this is not an example. I truly hate it. Hate it. Okay. So even if the man of my dreams now, who is amazing, was like, hey, would you like to go to a basketball game with me? I think I'd be like, you know what? You seem awesome. and I think you're great. And I do want to go on a date with you, but I don't like basketball. So you shine on with your basketball thing, right? And ask a guy friend or whatever. And then maybe could we do something that we both enjoy as a date? I would prefer that if that's okay with you. Like, I think that's what I would do now, right? And if he could handle that and be like, oh, okay, cool. You don't like basketball? I do. Great. I'll go with my guy friend. And, you know, maybe we can watch a BBC marathon later, you know, or whatever. Like I that would be trusting myself too, to be able to say, I'm not going to get wrapped up in things that I might not actually enjoy that are part of this guy's world that he can, no problem, maintain of his own free will by himself. It's just that I don't really want to do that stuff with him. And then we don't lose ourselves again. Right.
Having that realness, like, let's just be real with each other. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's a good thing.
Yeah. I love how when you're free from the toxic relationship and you're healing, you can tell because I'm like an open book too with people. Like, I don't mind telling them the same type of stuff. It's so freeing just to be able to be you and not have someone change you. And I noticed before, if I would have gotten a relationship too quickly, I wasn't even a person. So if I would have gotten in a relationship, I would have just done all the things that guy wanted to do because I didn't even know who I was. So I had to steer clear from that. I had to totally steer clear from that. So also you talk about relearning to trust your own intuition, your gut, that inner guide or God. When women begin to trust themselves, they are well on their way to rebuilding their ability to trust others in healthy ways. Did you want to expound on that? And how have you experienced this?
Yeah, this is a really hard one because I would say my main goal is to help women who are experiencing abuse trust themselves and trust their intuition. At the same time, I do want to say that women who are still being actively abused or manipulated, their intuition, from my perspective, and I could be wrong here, so I want to throw that out there, seems to be so clouded by the abuse that I think sometimes what they think is their own intuition is actually the abuse in their own heads talking. And I think this is super important to talk about because so many women will tell me, like, they'll give all the evidence of his severe abuse, sexual coercion. Maybe they've actually been raped by their husband, maybe, financial infidelity, like all kinds of stuff. Okay. And then they will say something like, but I just know in my heart that I can't move forward with this divorce, for example. There's something inside of them that they think is their own intuition, or maybe they think is the spirit, or they think is God, or they think is their inner guide that is stopping them from doing what would be in their own best self-interest. And at this point, who am I to say, right, whether this is God or not, because I'm not in their head and it's none of my business. So one part of me is like, oh, I don't want to be judgmental about this. Like, trust your gut. The other part of me wants to say, like, if his abuse, his sexual coercion, the spiritual coercion, any of that has like settled so far into your soul that you don't actually realize that it's the abuse talking, then that is a difficult stage to be in. And I don't know how to help women separate that out. One thing I've seen that works really well, and maybe you guys have seen this as well, is when they physically separate from that person and they're not talking to them so much.
Right. That's what I had to do. No contact. And once I was out, I could see clearly.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, my own gut feeling is like, I don't ever want to talk to him again. Like, now that I'm away from him, I feel so much peace, right? And they can kind of start feeling that. But in the moment, they think, well, he's feeling sad, so I need to help him, or I need to, like, I can't leave him now. Like, my marriage vows were in sickness and health, and he seems very sick, or, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to issue a warning to victims of abuse to be aware that at times you might be accidentally abused inside your own head from all the abuse that you've experienced. You're not abusing yourself per se. This is just that it has warped your sense of self so much that the abuse is living in there. And I just don't want you to accidentally mistake that for your own intuition.
That's really good.
Yeah. And especially in the case of spiritual abuse, because that's where I found, like, I knew I was done once he put his hands on me. But I remember the pastor at the church we were going to, I felt that guilt trip of like, oh, but you can't be done, and I felt that guilt of like, oh, I can't be done. I don't have like biblical grounds or whatever. And just really having to play that out. Like, no, I mean, I know I was done. I just was afraid of taking that step, especially if there's been that spiritual, like, no, you can't be done.
Yeah.
If that's implied to you.
There's one other aspect of this, and it is that like, it doesn't feel right, where it just feels bad. And so people want that internal sense of peace to know that what they're doing is the right thing. Right. And so, and they're not feeling peace. Like they might start working toward divorce and it just feels awful. And so they don't want to do it. And in this sense, I want to encourage people to consider that this is an abuse situation. So there's nothing about this that's going to feel good, right? Like right. You getting divorced is not the solution to the abuse. In fact, after the divorce, he will still be abusing you. I'm not saying don't get divorced per se. I'm just saying he's an abusive person. You divorcing him is not going to make him non-abusive. He's still going to be abusive after that. So none of that is going to feel good. There's not a win-win here. It's a lose in so many ways that it's always just going to feel bad. So please don't wait to take a step towards safety, thinking that I'm not going to take a step towards safety until I have peace and I know it's the right thing. Like, don't wait for that. It's just going to feel bad no matter what. Animals will chew their own leg off to get out of a trap, right? And in this case, it might feel that way. Thank goodness we don't actually have to chew our own limbs off, but it is going to be painful. It is not going to feel good. And that is not your gut telling you not to do it. It's just a bad situation. It's going to feel bad no matter what.
Right. It's painful no matter what. So you say trust in your own judgment by giving yourself little tasks to build trust in yourself. And you're teaching yourself that your word means something. And any more examples you'd want to give for that? We've kind of talked about this a little too, but
yeah, I think in this case, especially when you're kind of like, is my intuition in my own best self-interest, or is this just abuse talking? In this case, little tasks might be, today I'm going to go for a walk and talk with my sister who I really trust. And even though he is trying to loop me into a conversation, for example, let's say you're divorced and you're trying to heal. Maybe he sends you a message and the message could and is intended to hijack your entire day, right? That's the intent. And to say, I'm going to give myself a little break from this. And instead of spending all day crafting a message to email back to my ex about our kids, I'm going to go for a walk and talk to my sister on the phone. Or, little things you can do to start rebuilding trust in yourself. The more that you can focus on your own life and what you want your day to look like and how you want to spend your time, and then make little steps toward that, the better you're going to feel. Just one example here that I think is really good. I mentioned skiing. So I remember financially, I was absolutely devastated. My house was a mess. Like everything in my life was the complete and total mess at this time. And I took my kids up skiing and we were skiing that day and it was beautiful. The sun was out and everything was just beautiful up there. And I thought to myself, if I were a billionaire, okay, and my house was absolutely clean and everything in my life was going perfectly, guess what I would be doing today? I would be up here skiing with my kids.
Yeah. That's
so
good.
I am doing the thing that I would be doing if everything were perfect. Right? And everything is not perfect. It's a disaster. And so in that moment, I just was like, everything is perfect because I would be doing this thing regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And are there little things you can do like that? Like, for example, do you love to cook? Right. And so you can easily, like, what would you be doing if your life were perfect? If you didn't have any financial problems, if you didn't have any emotional trauma going on, if you didn't have anything, would you be cooking a meal? Would you be going for a walk? Like, think about that and then try to do those things that you would be doing if your life were perfect. And there are tons of everyday little things that you'd be doing.
Yeah.
You may be making your bed, right? You would be doing your laundry. There are lots of things you would be doing, and you're doing a lot of them now.
I don't do any of those things. No.
But yeah, like consider things like that. But like maybe one thing that you could do every day that you would be doing. Well, here's a real simple one. No matter how rich you are, no matter how perfectly your life is going, you still are going to have to pee. So every time you sit on that toilet, you think to yourself, if I were a billionaire and everything were perfect, I would still be on this toilet right now.
No, that is really good. That's what I spent. No, but I do. I retired from my job and I spent 14 months just doing the things that I love. And I figured out what those are. So by trusting yourself first in your own judgment, you will develop a level of safety and security. And only from that space can you move on to carefully start trusting in others, slowly and carefully. I found it interesting that you say in the podcast you would like to start building that trust in yourself by dipping your toe in a little bit. We talked about this already. Learning to trust yourself in that arena before you think about trusting them. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, then just my dipping of my toe in just having a conversation with a man who is available. That's my step toward that. For everyone else, just be creative, I would say, about the things that you're looking for. But make sure, I think the thing to do is after you know that you don't need anything from that person. I think that's the key.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that one. I think I even put that when I did have a dating profile, I put that on there. I'm not looking for someone to complete me,
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I think that's so important. You also say someone else's actions is their lack, their insecurity, their issue. Yes, we're affected by it, but it's not about us. We don't need to personalize it, but we do need to heal. And that's so true. And I think that's a big part of healing from when you've had that kind of a relationship. It's really looking at it that way, understanding that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book, Anne, and where we can buy it?
Sure. I'm so grateful to have been able to talk to you about this today. So I have a book called Trauma Mama Husband Drama. I developed this. It's a picture book for adults. And the reason why I wrote it like this was because so many women want to explain what's happening to other people. And they might want to give someone a big chunky book, like Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft or something. And their support person, or maybe their clergy or whatever, they're not inclined to read like such a big thing. And so this is a picture book that someone can just look at very quickly. And the pictures really illustrate what's going on. So you can find that on our website at btr.org/books, or you can also find it on Amazon. It's Trauma Mama Husband Drama. And then we have our daily online support group, which is amazing. You can get help within hours of finding out something traumatic. So especially for women who haven't yet developed a really strong support network, like of their sister or friend or other people, if they need to talk to someone who gets it, they can get on right away. And you can see our session schedule at btr.org. And for listeners today, even that are listening, you can get into a session and we'd love to see you today and help you out. It's an amazing community and it's live online. And I really wanted to make sure that we had a place where women could go and actually interact with other survivors real time, because I think that's very helpful. And so many women, they try to get into maybe their therapist, but their therapist is 2 weeks out, or, something like that, or even their therapist doesn't quite get it. Right. So we built that. And then, of course, you've talked multiple times about the podcast. You can find the Betrayal Trauma Recovery podcast on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting apps. And that is free to everyone. And I'm so glad that the episode about trusting yourself helped you. I do recommend people listen to it from the beginning, from when I started podcasting in 2016, actually on July 4th, my own Independence Day, which is pretty cool. And then listen to it up till now. You will hear that just my whole demeanor has changed. And I just want people to know that that's what every victim goes through. So don't get mad at yourself or be like, why am I not where Anne is now? I'm like, I was where you were. Don't worry about it. We're all the same, right? We all don't know what we don't know. We all go through the fog. We all have to process this. And it's the stages we all go through. And so we're just in this together. And I'm so glad that I'm in it with all of you. It's an honor.
It's a true inspiration to me, because I listened to mine. It was from 14 months ago. And I've healed so much just in that 14 months. You can tell. I've had people listen to it and go, well, wow, you were so broken in that podcast. And so I can't wait as time goes by to get to the place where you're at.
Yeah. And I was so worried on my podcast. I was so worried about what I was going to say because I was talking about being a people pleaser. And I was like, oh, wait, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything that's going to cause pain.
So she's come a long way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love everything that you've had to say. I love the idea of your book. That's a great idea, what you're saying, of just being able to have a picture book to kind of briefly explain that to someone that doesn't understand. Like you're saying, like a pastor.
Yeah, that's the hope. I don't know if I have had reports that it was helpful, right? But this is such a complex issue that even with the book, I think some people who just don't want to see it as abuse or whatever, they might be like, whatever. Yeah. But the hope is that it can help educate people quickly.
Yeah. I love that you have those quick resources, like you're saying, of people can talk to someone, because that was such a huge piece of my healing. I had a friend that had been through it previously in a previous marriage, and she was so understanding and validating, and that's huge.
Yeah,
especially when it's covert and you're thinking like, no, it's all me, there's something wrong with me. It's just so validating. Validation is such a big part of that piece. First, one of the first steps.
Yeah. And are you on Instagram and Facebook?
On Instagram, we are at Betrayal Trauma Recovery. On TikTok, we are btr.org. On Twitter, we are at Betrayal Trauma. And on Facebook, we are Betrayal Trauma Recovery. And Jane, who does the videos, she is amazing. So she's also a fellow survivor. And she started working for BTR a little while ago. She does our videos on Instagram and on TikTok, and she's incredible. So in addition to listening to the podcast, I would encourage people to follow us there and watch her videos because they're really short, but they're really great, like little inspirational things for every day that can help people really sort out the abuse.
Yeah, this podcast just exceeded my expectations. This was just phenomenal information. And I just wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are just amazing. It was fun too.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate being able to spend this time with you. No, you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there. And if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.